All right, welcome back to the Voidlight playtest here. Our crew, Raheem Ibn Jahul and Faith Loneguard, have managed to press into this abandoned section of the gut, not actually in the beast this whole thing is attached to, but in a portion of the station sort of establishment that is still pretty close to it, and strange things are going on here. They found the shrine that Faith was looking for here. And now I need to figure out like what I want to use the various random charts that we have to figure out what the danger and challenge is here. So like my first instinct is to say that there's some kind of trap here because it's a statue that clashes with the rest of the decor. It's nice. The green things are growing here in a place where probably it's very hard to grow green things even with the best hydroponics. So let's just ask the Oracle, like, is this a trap? And I think it's just as likely yes as no. So let's see what we got here. Okay, so that is 2 hits. So 2 hits. The answer is yes, and there's something extra. I probably should have asked, is there no trap here? would have been the nicer option, but there's a trap and something else. All right, I'm gonna dig through some charts to see if I can find something that's good inspiration for what that something else might be. I dug through all the charts from the current version of the playtest, and I'm coming to the theme tables because I want something that's a little more ephemeral and spiritual for this. It could be loot, that would be fine. And I could ask an Oracle to decide between loot or this, but the nice thing about solo gaming is you kind of follow your instinct. You know, you're the arbitrator of your own fun. You get to do what you feel is right. And I feel like the reward here should be something a little more esoteric. So let's see, there's 2 different theme tables here. Evens is the first one, odd is the second one. Even, so we're gonna roll the first one. White die is our first D, purple die is our second D. So 6 and 4, if we get on to where 6, 4 is here, it's poverty is the theme. The reward for this is poverty. So what does that mean here in this context? Because that does not seem like much of a reward. I think what it means is that she will be compelled to take a vow of poverty if she survives whatever crucible is here. And I have an idea for what I want for the trap. I don't think it should be like a poison needle or a pit opens up. I think some kind of spiritual essence is in this statue that is going to challenge her. So Faith is gonna kneel down here in prayer, and after a little while, you know, Raheem's kind of watching her back. I think he goes ahead and pulls his blaster out because this all feels bad. And if you watched the previous video, you know that something's lurking nearby that certainly is bad. And I think after a little while, he notices that her eyes are closed, but she's standing up and starting to move around. And I think Faith is confronting some kind of ephemeral, bodiless entity. My first instinct was to use a pool for this, because the pools are really good for tracking things that are happening over time, your more complex goals, your long-term challenges that aren't maybe strictly a combat, which this was kind of feeling like. But then I realized, all right, so we have this spirit entity trying to wrest control of Faith's corporeal form, then I think it's gonna see Raheem as an obvious threat and probably try to harm him. So I think what I'm going to do here, we are going to treat this like a combat. This spiritual entity has 3 hit points. Faith is going to be locked in sort of a battle of wills with it. And I think if she is not securing those hits, then we're going to have some consequences that Raheem has to experience in the physical world. So let's do that. All right, so this definitely feels like, for Faith, this feels like an insight. We're off to a great start with just 1 there. We do have our Voidlight on high beam for this, so she's going to get an extra die for that, for sort of being at the ever-present advantage of that. I don't have anything in her gear that I feel like helps confront spiritual terror. So why don't we go ahead and push this first roll? And I'm going to lower her stamina down to 4 again and give her 3 dice on this. And let's see how this first clash with the entity turns out. It turns out not great because I got no hits on that one. So I think immediately, you know, the first thing that's going to happen here is the thing that's taken over for Faith's physical form is just starting to walk away. And Raheem is not understanding what's going on. I think he gets a good look at Faith and realizes, like, when he sees her eyes, there's not anyone home, at least not anyone human, it seems. And so I think he's going to do a thing that he normally wouldn't do, and he's going to grab her arm to try to pull her back, knowing that it's probably not his friend who's there at the moment. And that is going to get him potentially just like clocked in the jaw. So let's do a vigor for Raheem to try and wrestle with the puppeteer here. So we've got our 2 for vigor, and then we've got our 1. Again, our Voidlight is on high beam, which seems real cool now, but I think is going to be real not cool as soon as the scene is over. And that's not going great for him. So that is going to force him to make a save here. The solo rules give us some advice on what to do in terms of risk. So Risk Oracle here, when you have to make a save, roll a die based on your level of control of the situation and the risk rating. I think it hasn't totally spiraled out of hand here, so I think we can call this uncertain. I'm going to roll these tiny little 2d6 that I just happen to have around, so that's 1 hit. And if we've got 1 hit, the risk rating for the save is set to 2. So the way that the saves work, I get to roll a number of d6 equal to my current stamina. Right now, a healthy 6. That's great. And I'm going to hold on to any of these that are successes, set them aside. Then I'm going to lose some of these based on our risk rating, which we just determined was 2. Oh, look at that. Roll that beautiful bean footage. A lot of these are safe. However, there are 2 that I am going to lose here from that. But it's nice that we have successes. That means I avoid any consequences. So Raheem's not losing any hit points. His situation hasn't eroded any. So as we see here for the outcomes for checks, 1 hit, you do it, like it is accomplished, but the GM adds a consequence. So our entity has lost 1 of its 3 hit points here. It's weakening its hold on Faith. It's starting to lose the battle here, but I think in the physical world, it is going to escalate. I think it's going to pull Faith's blaster and start to point that at Raheem. So now his situation, the danger, the consequences have escalated to actual harm and quite a bit of it. So we don't need to go back to him right away, I don't think, because Faith did succeed. So she's thrown the entity off its game. So she's going to go back to roll again here. Normally rolling the same thing over and over, I think is a little bit boring in a game, but at the moment, like, our stakes are high enough, I'm kind of okay with doing it. Also, I have to make this decision to, like, drain down her stamina each time, and I think I'm gonna do it again here. I think this time, if I get a consequence, I think maybe Faith is gonna have to make a save. I think this is draining her a lot, and she may end up with some harm if she ever makes it back to her own body here. So again, we're going to get 3 dice for her insight, for our Voidlight, which is just burning battery, and for blowing that stamina, spending that stamina here. All right, we lucked out here. That is 2 hits. So I think in the real world, Raheem sees that blaster come out and then stops and halts. And I think he can see her eyes fluttering, some flashes. He's probably trying to talk to her. I don't think he has a lot of experience with this sort of danger and situation. So my guess is, being someone who's got a lot of concerns with loyalty, is that he's sort of talking to her as calmly as he can to try and get through to the person who is somewhere in there. And I think nothing he's doing is actually having any effect on this, but probably feels good for him. So let's go 1 more. I guess we're gonna spend that 1 more stamina, and if this roll is bad, we're she's just going to be in trouble. And we're going to roll these 3 dice and hope that we get a clean roll to push the entity out. We absolutely do not here. So that is going to be Faith making a save. And as our Oracle said, we're going to do a quick roll just to look at the risk rating. I think we've escalated quite a bit here. Or rather, excuse me, we would be rolling just 1 die for escalated risk. We get no successes, so I think this is a risk of 3 on this save here, and of course Faith's just got the 1. Stamina left, great, and that's not a success. So we failed that roll. I think she's not only going to take, well, I think she should take some damage here. You know, the more that I think about the situation, we talk this out. We talk about how gaming is a conversation, and when you're solo gaming, it's a conversation with yourself. So there's that. Perfectly healthy, I'm sure. I don't think she's taking damage because the entity doesn't want to hurt her physical body. It needs to use that as a vessel, so it doesn't want it to be injured. I think what happens here is that the entity moves fast and catches Raheem off guard, and I think he is the one who gets hurt by this. So that being a risk of 3, let's take a look at the blaster's entry. I'm a little curious as to how we would normally resolve this. We're sort of using it in an unusual way. So let's look at the rules and see what we've got and extrapolate from there. That's usually, you do a lot of that in solo gaming. So that's what we're doing here. So digging through the entry for weapons, some of the more specialized weapons definitely do have specific damage codes, but I realized our blaster is kind of it's sort of our narrative companion that stands by our side, and its damage tends to be dictated by number of hits that you get. Since the risk rating here was 3, I'm going to treat that like the hits. So fortunately, Raheem's a little tougher than characters tend to be because he is taking 3 damage to his hit protection here, which is not great. So I think he's been shot. Well, no, he's been shot. He's been shot. We know that for sure. I think he's bleeding is the other situation, is that once he gets out of this threat, to make sure things aren't going to get worse, there's going to have to be something else. You know what? We're solo gaming. Let's ask the Oracle. Hey, Oracle. Should we escalate it that much? Do we think that Raheem is bleeding and that there will be more to do after this? So the situation is precarious. I think we only get 1d6 on this roll for sure. Great. Good result. Okay, so he's definitely bleeding and something's definitely going to have to be done or else he's cooked after this. But in the meantime, having failed a stamina roll, we get to push Faith's stamina right back up to 6 again. We refill that after a failed save. She's just going to press on because there's nothing to do until she gets this thing out of her head. So we're going to try again here. Start bleeding off stamina again just because we've got to get it done. And she does manage to do it. I think the shock of wherever she is in there, hearing that blaster fire and hearing his scream helps her push through and shove the entity out. So she's back. He's desperately trying to knock the blaster out of her hand. Probably succeeds now that she's back in control of her own physical body and not actively trying to hurt him. I think there's a bunch of screaming as he realizes, like, okay, she's back in charge. This isn't a trick. My friend's at the wheel again instead of some bodiless space horror. And now he's dying, I guess is the way we would put that. So this is going to feel like doing some quick first aid is going to feel like an operate to me. Oh no, you know what? She does have the med patch. So I think that med patch is going to have to get used here. Now, normally the med patch will help you with your hit protection. I think in this case, they're going to have to blow the med patch just to stop him from hemorrhaging. So I think this item, which normally would help me with something that's a little more mechanical, in this case, we have to sacrifice just to stop bad stuff. So Raheem will be able to patch. They're probably going to take a little breather here. And I think looking back up at the statue, once we've got Raheem all cleaned up, his suit duct taped back. The vac suit he's wearing underneath his like jacket and cool clothes. I sort of picture them being a little bit with the aesthetic from the artwork in Citizen Sleeper, where people wear a lot of their practical space garb underneath more regular clothes, more expressive, stylish clothes. So I think it's one of those situations. Once his vac suit is taped up and his jacket back on, I think Faith's going to look to the statue, and this is when she's going to start hearing voices, probably nicer voices than the evil alien presence, but something is pushing her to take this vow of poverty and promising that things will be better if she sheds her privilege and she stops, you know, this sort of hunt for the next big score and starts just getting rid of things. I think they have a very quick conversation about that, which Raheem is like, well, then that's insane. Why are we here? Other than to like find the wealth that will get us out of this horribly dangerous life. This is a discussion they gotta have at a later time, because this is not the place for it. And I think now is a good time when we need to do a check for our Voidlight. We've been running it on high beam, which has been cool for having lots of dice to succeed at things. And is less cool now because we can lose up to 3 of these dice, and we will. So our Voidlight is now down to 1 die, so that's good. We're definitely going to run out of that battery this time. We have a spare battery, so we're okay-ish. We do have the generator that we can charge up a little bit, so we're okay-ish. I think the first thing they're going to do is run back and get as much charge as they can from the generator. Do that quickly while we're here in the cold. Oh, that's right. We had sort of talked about how like a save has to happen in there in order to get that charge. So I think that's Raheem going in and making that save. He is currently at 4 stamina, so let's make that save from the cold. And you know what? He does all right. We do make that save. For the sake of speed, I'm just gonna say that's like a normal. This is sort of an ambient environmental thing. I actually think that's a pretty minimal risk. Again, sometimes you want to ask the Oracle about it. Other times you sort of feel like you understand the situation. I think that's appropriate and fair. So I'm only going to lose 1 from stamina. So we're dropping that down to a 3 for him. I think Raheem's going to suggest that they check out these 2 sort of side areas first. I think he doesn't like the idea of something slinking up behind them. And we sort of know that we already know ahead of time that the creature, the hybrid that is waiting for them, is very concerned with protecting what's in this chest. That feels like more of a finale. So next time we're going to further explore some of these side passages before we go to one of the bigger, I anticipate being a bigger confrontation.